Hey guys, it's Quickie Baby and welcome back to another quick tank review. This week we're going to be looking at the Type 61. This is the Tier 9 Japanese medium tank. That foregoes quite a lot of armor to gain increased mobility, extra penetration on the gun, which is an absolutely formidable 105mm. If this sounds like the tank for you, then hang around, I've got some gameplay coming right up. And if not, I'll try and pick apart its weaknesses so you can take advantage of them on the battlefield. So the Type 61 has a fairly standard 1,700 hit points. It weighs just over 35 tons when it's fully equipped. The tank gets a tremendous Mitsubishi engine, which means that it has a nice horsepower to ton ratio and a pretty darn good top speed limit of 47.6 kilometers an hour. And it's able to motor around corners because of its traverse speed of 48 degrees a second, which is very nice for a Tier 9 medium tank, especially when you compare it to, for example, the Centurion 7-1. Now, if I perked your interest because of the impressive mobility characteristics of this tank, you're going to be disappointed with the armor. It has 55mm on the front of the hull, 35 on the side, and 25 at the rear. Now, looking at the side of this tank, it's a really big target, and the armor is so thin that it's easily penetrable by HE rounds. And unfortunately, the turret armor doesn't get that much better. On paper, it's 70 at the front, 60 at the side, and 35 at the rear. Let's just take a quick look into what a tank's viewer to get a more well-rounded opinion. So here's the Type 61 with the 105mm gun equipped with the upgraded turret. Here's the armor profile for it. I'm going to leave the key at the bottom here. One thing we should immediately point out is that even though the armor in the garage was highlighted to be a maximum of 70mm, we can find it's only around here on the turret. But there is a gigantic wedge of spaced armor over this. Now, the armor design of this spaced armor is a tiered approach. We can see there's 124mm in a kind of a cross in the middle, with 90mm surrounding that, and 40 behind that. If we hide the spaced armor, we can see that there is actually a gap behind the gun, which is 0mm thick. And what this means is that even the thickest part of the effective armor of this tank, i.e. right over the gun, can still be very easily penetrated by most tanks that are going to shoot it. Your only real chance to be able to bounce shots with the Type 61 is if they shoot outside of the 0mm, i.e. around here, where they're going to have to get through 90 or 124, and then have to get through the 70 behind that. Unfortunately for the Type 61, we can see that there is a gigantic weak point on top of the vehicle as well. The armor here is 60mm and then 45mm. Basically, if you get shot here, it's very likely to penetrate, do full damage to your tank, and possibly take out your commander at the same time. The frontal hull armor on the upper plate is 55mm, but it is very well angled, which means that if the enemies do shoot you, maybe from the side, that you can pull off some miracle bounces. Your only real chance to be able to do this is to put pressure on your opponents and try and get them to shoot at horrific angles, or hope that you get a glancing blow. Really, to tank effectively with the Type 61, you want to make use of its gun depression as much as possible, which increases the angle of the upper plate and prevents them from shooting your weak point on top, as well as exposing as little of your weak top turret armor as possible. So we know so far that it's highly mobile, but its armor isn't really worth much. But it's really good news for the armament on the Type 61. This 105mm fires 6 rounds a minute with 258mm of penetration with a standard 390 alpha damage. Now, the accuracy on this gun is an okay 0.36 with a 2.3 second aim time. But just quickly, I'll run over the other characteristics where it's got 42 degrees a second traverse speed on the turret and 400 meters view range, which means that you're going to be able to see your enemies at very far distances. And to enhance this, you might want to consider not taking ventilation, but instead taking coated optics, or if you feel like playing more passively, binoculars. Nevertheless, my preferred option of the loadout would be vertical stabilizers, the rammer, and the vents to have an all-round tank rather than one that's focused on view range. So I'm using the Tank Compare website to emphasize the differences between the Tier 9 medium tanks, which do play out fairly similarly. Here we see the Type 61 on the left, the USA medium, the M46 Patton in the middle, and the British medium, the Centurion Mark 7-1 on the right. So the Type 61 and the Patton have got pretty much the same mobility, which is 20% faster with regards to top speed than the Centurion 7-1. The horsepower to ton ratio is actually slightly worse in the Type 61 than it is on the Patton, but you get a large advantage with the traverse speed compared to the Patton and a massive traverse speed improvement over the Centurion 7-1. Now the ground resistance is slightly better on the hard compared to the Patton, the same as the Centurion 7-1. Quite a bit better over medium terrain resistance than the Patton, but worse in soft terrain. One thing that is great on this tank is that it does have quite a low chance to be set on fire of 12% as it is a diesel engine. So if you want to use premium consumables instead of a fire extinguisher, then you might be able to take that risk with less chance of going up like a tinderbox. So the view range is 10 meters less than the American and the British vehicles. Now this is where it really gets interesting. The comparison of the 105mm on all of these vehicles. Now the alpha damage is the same. The penetration is significantly better by 40mm on the Type 61 compared to the M46 Patton. It is quite comparable to the Centurion 7-1, which is 10mm higher than that and 50mm than the Patton. Now the shell velocity, as this tank does use an APCR round, is 50% higher than the Patton, the same as the Centurion 7-1, which means that your shell is going to reach the target quicker and you're going to have to give less lead. Now to look at the DPM differences, the Patton is a DPM monster, 2,500. It fires 6.45 rounds a minute, which gives it more DPM than the E50 or even the E50M. In fact, the Patton's DPM is 25% higher than the Centurion 7-1 and 7.5% higher than the Type 61s. But the main thing that the Type 61 does really well against is the Centurion 7-1. It is 20% more DPM than the British Tier 9 medium, and it is right in the middle of the accuracy values. The British tank is the most accurate at 0.32, which is rather impressive. The Type 61 is 0.36, and the American vehicle is 0.40. And that is the buffed value. That was buffed just in 9.2 from 0.42. Now everyone will know that this is kind of like heavy tank accuracy. And this is sort of kind of tier 10 medium tank accuracy. And this is neither here nor there really. Now the aim time on all of the tanks is the same. And the gun depression is 10 degrees, which is very impressive for all of the vehicles. Now the elevation on the Type 61 can be slightly lacking. And I found myself recently trying to aim up at opponents who were above me on mines. And that is one of the limitations of the Type 61, that I was unable to do so. Another limitation of this tank is that it runs out of ammunition very quickly. It only carries 32 rounds, compared to the Patton, which has 54, and the Centurion 7-1 can be firing all day long and still not run out of ammunition. So as we can see here, none of the tanks have the best gun. The Centurion 7-1 has terrible DPM and the Patton has amazing DPM, but the Centurion 7-1 has the penetration to reliably use it while the Patton does not. And it's the same with the accuracy. The Centurion 7-1 is an accurate vehicle while the Patton isn't. So what this really comes down to is that the American medium tank wants to probably be up close or at medium ranges, where it doesn't need super high accuracy and super high penetration, as it's hopefully closer to be able to pinpoint the enemy weak points more easily. In a close-up fight, the Patton is going to demolish a Centurion 7-1. It's a more mobile, smaller target with the DPM to rip its opponents apart. And this is where the Type 61 comes in. It's sort of in between. It doesn't have the terrible accuracy of the Patton, it doesn't have the terrible DPM of the Centurion 7-1, and it still has the penetration to reliably take on any tank that it can meet frontally. Especially so considering that it can fire heat rounds for 330mm of penetration, which is massively better than the Patton, and a different kind of mechanic to the Hesh rounds of the Centurion 7-1. More suitable for punching through heavy flat armor and taking advantage of softly armored targets. Now that was quite a lot of theory crafting, but I felt that it was important. While the Type 61 may be the most recent addition to the Tier 9 medium tanks, it doesn't really add any unique features. Nevertheless, it's a fantastic all-rounder, and hopefully I'm going to show you that in the gameplay coming up right now. So I'm playing on Sand River along with Green Man. Shout out to you, Green Man. We can see that there are 3 Tier 10 tanks on the enemy team, so this is not a bad matchup for the Type 61, not by a long shot. There are quite a few Tier 8s as well. This is pretty much an average matchup for the Type 61. Now matchup-wise, Type 61 doesn't really care in my opinion. Its armor means that it doesn't matter if it's a Tier 7 tank shooting it or a Tier 10 tank shooting it. It's still going to get penetrated. You just need to hopefully keep your gun singing and working your targets. I'm taking the Type 61 into a very strong position on Sand River. And I'm going to go hunting for a tier 10 already. See the side of his turret? Put a lovely shot into there. It was a nice high roll. 454 damage. Seems to want to let me shoot him again. I want to shoot the T110E5. And we can snipe right into the top weak point of that vehicle. Something that I don't think that the M46 pattern could have done. The Centurion 7-1 could have very easily done it though. So I see that he's got wise to me, and that he indeed wants to engage me. So I pulled back very quickly there, knowing that it's very likely that he's going to be able to penetrate me, and I'm not going to be able to penetrate him. I got a bit unlucky there that I bounced off a Leopard prototype. That tank has got basically no armor, just like me. And I would have loved to have been able to put a shot into him. Now, one thing in the Type 61 is you do see me pulling back quite quickly after I fire. Oh, that one was a bit unlucky. And that's because you get absolutely dominated if you stay in the line of fire for too long. And unfortunately, Green Man just got caught out there. And I tunnel visioned a bit and got shot right in the side of my weak point. Look how far that sticks up. If that hadn't been sticking up, the T110E5 wouldn't have hit me at all. That's definitely something you've got to watch out for in the Type 61. If you can see the enemies, they can see your weak point. No idea what that T-71 was thinking. I'm just going to ignore him and try and pick apart my enemies one by one. That Leopard prototype tried to use the excellent top speed of his vehicle to make a flanking maneuver. But it is very hard to try and outflank your opponents here. No idea what that T-32 was thinking. So you can see that we've been able to put a couple of effective shots off. Oh, that one skimmed just over the turret. I aimed that one a little badly. We've managed to put in quite a few effective rounds into this T-62A. And here come the enemy. They're making their big push. But thankfully for us, we've got some tank destroyers up on the ridgeline behind us that made them fall back very quickly indeed. So we're just trying to put pressure on this T-62A here. And that's the third shot I've put into him. 1,158 damage done to a very important medium tank. Now we are outpositioned and I have to get out of there. Nothing that I can do with a T-54 and a T-62 above me. It's going to go very badly indeed, so I have to take the risk to get out. So I make my way along, take a look to see if these ridge lines will help me out. We managed to absorb a shot from the IS-3 in our tracks there. The T-54 has come off the hill, which I'm very happy about indeed. I don't really want to have those medium tanks above me shooting down on my very lightly armored tank. So there's a T-34 here, but I remember that I did get shot by the IS-3. Looks like he has died now. And there's a Lerva. We put one right into his tracks, holding him in place. Now an IS-3 wants to try again. Our reload just wasn't quite good enough to be able to put another shell into him. Now there's a T-54 behind me. Oh, I get very lucky and he misses. We bounce off his cupola. Oh gosh. And right now, I think when this game was happening, I was in a bit of a fluster. I feel like I'm completely surrounded by opponents. I'm just trying to keep my eyes about me. If you look at the map right now, I'm just trying to spot for the tank destroyers that are behind me, trying to hold back this ridge line of opponents. And that one, I aimed too low and too right. I needed to aim that one slightly higher and slightly more left. Here comes the IS-3. We put a good shot into him and he tries to rush down into cover. Seems to get caught out of position by a 110 that he didn't expect would be there. And we put another into him. So these kind of ridge lines are where the Type 61 really comes into its own. With 10 degrees of gun depression, great mobility, great penetration, good aim time and pretty good accuracy, you have all the tools you'd need to keep bobbing along, backwards, forwards, and to keep that 105mm gun singing. So what you see me doing here is staying 50 meters away. I'm doing a long circle. What that means is that the lurver doesn't proxy spot me, and so I can get the ambush on him. So I'm just going to pause here for a second to explain that. So the lurver was here. One of my teammates had spotted him. So I took a circle around him to stay 50 meters away from him so I could hopefully ambush him. If I'd gone this way along the dunes, he would have proxy spotted me here and been aiming up at him. Luckily we bounced his shot. Actually we didn't bounce, he just simply missed. And with the great rate of fire on this gun, I know I can get in there and put in a punishing shot into him. Now we can see two T-34s making a last-ditch attempt defensive. That was a kill or be killed kind of moment. And right now, this T-34 is just not in the right place. He's doing the right thing. He's going out swinging. But there's simply nothing that he can do. One thing I'd quickly like to highlight is I've only got 2 AP rounds left in this tank. Now, fair enough, I've done nearly 5,000 damage in this game, which is a great round in any medium tank. You guys might be getting an idea of just how much of a limitation that low amount of ammunition is. Thinking about this, it might be a good idea to not take those 2 HE rounds that I have in the vehicle, maybe replace them with APCR rounds. But nevertheless, those 2 HE rounds can come in a lot of use for either taking out tanks on very low health or interrupting the cap. So I chose this replay as one that highlights how the Type 61 does under pressure, and how its gun characteristics might perform differently to, for example, the Centurion 7.1 and the M46 pattern. We managed to keep the gun singing until the enemies had a vantage point on us. As soon as we couldn't hide back behind this ridge, we lost our health very quickly, and we had to use the speed and the maneuverability of the Type 61 to find a new hidden location. From here, we played a medium tank role to keep spotting our enemies and just keep harassing them with our gun. And then we survived long enough to be able to clean up the Tier 8 heavy tanks that were remaining. So let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats before we go into some more gameplay. So this was the Mastery Badge in the Type 61, something that's quite hard to pick up in this vehicle. We managed to make 41,000 credits profit, fired 22 of which we hit 19 and 15 of those penetrated. Due to the nice alpha damage on this gun, that gave us a total of nearly 5,000 damage. We can see just how badly the armor did. We took 5 hits, of which all 5 penetrated, and we had very little health left at the end of the game. As a medium tank with excellent view range, we managed to pick up 2,570 damage upon detecting, and 800 damage upon detracking. This video hopefully highlighted the all-purpose nature of the Type 61, able to get into position quickly and enforce its will with its 105mm, as long as it doesn't get shot at. So let's get stuck into some more gameplay. So a very interesting matchup here. We can see that the enemy have got quite a few Tier 10 tanks, but 2 of them are artillery. A bunch of Tier 9s, and then 5 Tier 8s. So, the Type 61 has the mobility to take aggressive positions. Looking at the enemy setup, I thought that as long as I can get in here and not get rushed by the T-54 or the T-54E1, I should be okay. Taking the central position on Runeberg is of immense importance, and it really is a current meta that I would recommend on any medium tank. So here we can see a T-54 in the open. Get rather unlucky with the shot, but I don't think I aimed it long enough. Should have aimed a little bit longer. We're able to put one through there, the wall, on this T-54E1. And I want to pop out and put some more shots in without getting shot at. Well, that T-54E1 is an autoloader. I know he's got 3 left. I'm going to try and side scrape out, trying to bait some more shots. But if I can put a shot into a T-57 Heavy, I will. He's fired. He's only got 1 left now. So I decide to come around the corner and take a hit, hoping that he would either miss or bounce. Now I know he's reloading. But his friend comes to back him up. Luckily for me, the T-54 does not aim his shot very carefully. And although it hits us, it failed to do damage. So the T-54 comes round again. He's being very reckless indeed. Don't think he quite realizes the DPM on the Type 61, how quickly we're able to chew him up. But I'm going to ignore the T-54 for now and focus on the American autoloader. You guys are hopefully seeing right now the kind of work you can do with the gun on the Type 61. The accuracy, the penetration, the rate of fire. It's absolutely brilliant. But I definitely have met my match here. An FE215B. And right now, I don't want to back down from a fight because that's kind of the person that I am. But right now, the right thing to do is to get away. Why would I want to duke it out with a Tier 10 British heavy tank? Wonderful shot there to lock in the T-32 in place. Going to try and retrack him. And those are the kind of shots that you need to pull off in the Type 61. We stopped him from coming around the corner. And it doesn't matter how thin my armor is. If I can hold a Tier 8 American heavy tank in place and just simply rip him apart. We did 1,300 damage to him there, held him in place for our artillery to finish him off. So back to the argument of that this tank has absolutely no business engaging an FE215B. The FE215B is a British Tier 10 heavy tank, which has got amazing DPM. No Tier 9 medium tank has any business trying to engage that behemoth. And if he wants to sit up there all day, that's fine. I'll break through the western flank, let them hold the east with their superior tanks and numbers, and hopefully come round at them afterwards. So we're trying to put shots in here on the enemy vehicles, and oh, there's an artillery! Must get him. It's very unusual that the enemies stacked so many tanks up above. That FE215B and the T-57 Heavy were 2 of the most important tanks on the enemy team. And they couldn't afford to basically do nothing. And this T-54, wow, he's come back to haunt me, that's for sure. He put in another good shot into us. We managed to take him out. But our health has been significantly reduced now. To be honest, in the Type 61 here, our armor's held up pretty well. I believe this was an absorb, and I think that this was a glancing blow up here. Now we're going hunting for the artillery. Looking back on this, this might have been a little bit brash. Whoa, that's a Tier 10. It's a Tier 10. Get back into safety. We could have died very easily there, and if we had died, then it would have pretty much been an even fight between the 2 teams. I think that's the point where I realized, hey, this is a lot closer there than I believed it was. And you can get a rush of blood when you're advancing round the flank, especially when you've got so much mobility like the Type 61 has. Then you realize I'm a very lightly armored Japanese tank in a close game. Got to play a little bit more carefully than that. So the enemy FE215B is now breaching the middle of the map. He's going against an Object 140. And with some backup from the 5120, he makes a very important kill there, while a Leopard prototype is running into our artillery. But here we go. In the meantime, 5120 We put in a good shot into his turret there, confirming the kill on him, preventing him from backing up that Leopard prototype. Now I saw the FV215B was going south in his last move, and that he continued to do so. And right now I'm in a bit of a confusion. That Leopard prototype is on half health, and he's working his way through our artillery. I don't really want to go face to face with the Leopard prototype. I'd far rather engage him in the side. So that's what you see me doing here. I'm on the lookout to see if I'm needed to take out that artillery. But thankfully the T-54E1 handled the situation. Now I know that the enemy have an artillery, and boy, I don't want to get shot by that. Even if it splashes anywhere near me, it's going to take me out. So I want to try and get back into the town to hopefully avoid the artillery fire. But there's a Leopard prototype around here, who I believe is on half health. There he is. We put one into him and pull back. And now the Leopard prototype realizes, well, maybe it's not such a good idea to go around that corner. I call for help because I can't take a shot. But at least 8 times out of 10, the GW Tiger P can take a shot from the Leopard prototype with 440 health. While we're just waiting for this tense situation to pan itself out, I'd just like to highlight again, we're at 5,500 damage, but we're starting to run out of ammunition. You judge it. Whether you believe that it's a very large limitation of the vehicle or not. So, we took our chances. I knew that I had to fire quickly at the Leopard prototype and get out of harm's way because he could have either shot me or, more evidently, the artillery would have wanted to get me. So I knew as soon as I was spotted I had to get out of that situation. And we were quite lucky that the artillery did not manage to take us out. There's the Leopard prototype. We come around the corner and zip one into the back of his head. So you can see that the Type 61 has the speed to outmaneuver its opponents, the penetration to reliably penetrate them, and the rate of fire to at least outgun many tanks that, for example, the Centurion 7-1 would struggle with. That's the main thing for me, that the rate of fire on this tank does make it a superior all-round machine compared to the Centurion 7-1. Well, I guess I can't really say all-round, because it doesn't have the armor that the Centurion 7-1 does. Ah, the GW Tiger P just took out that Object 261 before we were able to. And so that is the Type 61 in a nutshell. It's an absolutely beautiful medium tank that takes the impressive gun characteristics of the Centurion 7-1 and combines them with the mobility and the flexibility of the pattern. But in doing so, it completely forgoes its armor. Let's take a quick look at the post-game stats before I provide an overall analysis of the vehicle. So Runeberg is an interesting map for lightly armored medium tanks. The Type 61 generally depends on its gun depression, and you saw me put that to good use on Sand River. Runeberg almost needs no gun depression, meaning that you often have to expose your hull armor, and in the Type 61 that's never a good idea. Nevertheless, in this replay we simply outshot our opponents, gaining a high caliber in a tier 10 game. We did a significant amount more damage than anyone else on the team, picking up 5,768 damage and 4 kills to go with it. We fired 24, of which we hit 20, and we weren't ever really fully aiming our shots. The impressive penetration characteristics of the Type 61 meant that of these 2017 penetrated, the armor actually held up pretty well this game. Of the 7 hits we received, 5 of them penetrated, but we were down to a very low amount of hit points by the end of it, in what panned out to be a very tense and exciting game. During the battle, we traveled 3.3 kilometers, and we made flanking maneuvers that probably the Centurion 7-1 couldn't have done. One thing I'd also quickly like to mention is that I didn't have to fire any heat rounds until my AP ran out. And that's something that's very refreshing in this vehicle. Any T-54 player will know that you do have to fire heat rounds to remain competitive in the vehicle against heavily armoured tanks. The Type 61 loads heat as a luxury, not a necessity, which is why it's a vehicle that can make consistent profit. And that might appeal to many of you. So the attributes of the Type 61 that we have discussed have allowed me to get some very competitive statistics, at least compared to the other Tier 9 vehicles that I drive. After 46 games that I've played in this tank, we've managed to pick up 63% wins, destroying on average 2 enemies per game, with 2,859 damage, yielding us 1,155 average experience per game. The Type 61 has been an absolute joy for me to play, and I've still got a long way to go until I get to the SDB-1. The Type 61 is a highly mobile, lightly armoured vehicle which is capable of quickly getting itself into position, and it has an armament capable of making any tank in the game wince. Now, it may not do anything the best, but really, apart from the armor, there's nothing bad about this vehicle. Which means that for a intermediate to advanced player, this might be a very interesting tank for you. Nevertheless, I don't recommend this as a starting tank. I think you'd be far better suited to go for a T-54, or probably at least have the low-profile nature and the armor capabilities of the M46 pattern, especially in light of its recent buffs. Nevertheless, as a player who really liked the pattern, and currently really likes the Centurion 7-1, I think that the Type 61 definitely has its own place on the battlefield, and it's something that will be staying in my garage even when I get the SDB-1. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, or if it was just useful, please consider rating it down below. It really helps the channel out. And let me know what you think about the Type 61 in the comments below. If you haven't quite got to the Type 61 yet, I've already done a tank review on the SDA one, so maybe you want to click that. I'll put it right up there and you can see. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Which forgoes having... Oh. Why did that plane just fly through the building? What? Oh dear. That's gonna be awkward. I might have to edit that out.